Okay, first topic of conversation. AI-generated newsreader is live in Kuwait. So this blonde-haired, computer-generated woman named Feda appeared on Kuwait News. Could this cutting-edge tech replace the need for human news anchors? So this person does not exist. This is a generated model which you can put in some kind of GPT, instruction, and it will give you the news, and it will have her reading it out. And this is going to potentially replace news anchors. Obviously a lot cheaper, a lot easier. They don't get sick, they don't take vacation, you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. You can just plug it in and, I imagine, create any type of image that you like. It could be the most attractive person in the world. You could have people that look like celebrities talking about different topics, and very, very interesting to see. So AI generated news reader revealed. Let's go back and get all of your opinions and thoughts into this. Harry, we'll start with you, mate. What's your perspective when you see this?
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting application of this technology. I think, is it going to replace human newsreaders? I don't think so. I think the sort of personality and the character you can get from a real person currently isn't being able to be captured by these kind of AIs, if you like, but that's not to say they won't in the future. I think that there's going to be more generally a premium on the sort of the human touch in all of these instances where AI could ultimately, provide the sort of level of human reality that is currently done by real humans today. I do think it is it's quite a long path to get there, though. That last sort of 10-20% of realism is a critical last 10 or 20%. We're sort of in that uncanny valley at the moment.
Right now, I think you're right. I'd rather watch a person speaking than a AI model. The voice sounds really fake and that sort of thing. But do you think we could potentially get to that point where it's indistinguishable from a real person speaking? Because if that happens, I'm kind of screwed, because I've got hundreds of hours of podcasts. Right, they can make me say anything at this point, and maybe I'll just replace myself on the pod and just do AI episodes of AI Alfie speaking. But do you think we could get to that point in the not so distant future? Do you see that as a reality?
Yeah, sure. I do think it's going to get more and more. It's just going to get better and better, basically. Yes, I think that is definitely possible.
Okay, Fred, what's your point of view when you see this story, mate?
So when I look at that photo, I think it's quite creepy, and most of the instances I've seen are the same. And when I hear them, I'm not very impressed. But to agree with Harry that we're a long way away, but I think it will come. I think it was Bill Gates said that in the short term, people tend to overestimate the impact of technology, but in the long term, they tend to underestimate the impact. And I think we're a long way from AGI, and I think you would need that kind of level of interaction and serendipity, which isn't here yet.
Yeah, I mean, we often overestimate what we can do in a year, but underestimate what we can do in like a decade. And maybe in a decade, you won't be able to tell if this is an AI or a person. But right now, I think you're right. I think you're both right. I think it's a bit kind of basic, right? I don't know if I want to sit there and watch this for hours and hours on end, telling me the news each day. But who knows? I mean, if more and more and more companies start doing it, perhaps it will become the norm. Mikhail, what's your take on this story?
I find this quite terrifying, to be honest. I think if we look at the kinds of things we've been seeing in the polarization of the media in the past 5 years, this takes us to a very scary place, because, I mean, I foresee how this can be used to completely discredit public figures who have been trusted.
So deepfake type technology.
China used this in the last election cycle in the US. They did deepfake news reading to basically sow discontent around gun violence. And I think we're going to see far, far more of that as the technology gets better. And the natural next step from the deepfakes is full computer generation. And that's also scary, because it completely removes the human attribution element. Like, you're not trusting a person. It's an organization. And like, how easy is that to just create an identical brand? Like, you could see 50 channels with effectively the same human being speaking very similar words, but with very different implications.
And putting that into social media, that can easily sway a narrative, right? And if you get on the hashtags, it can influence and drive public opinion.
Yeah.
Maybe Elon was onto something with the verified ticks. Maybe that kind of makes sense. So you can trust the source of the information. But we've even seen that system being abused with people making fake accounts and various things happening off the back of that. But yeah, interesting to see where it's going, right? I mean, if I had to take like a little yes or no from each of you, 5-10 years from now, do you think this will replace human news readers, news anchors on scale, en masse? Fred, would you say yes, it will be a reality, or no, humans will still be the ones delivering the news for the most part?
I think it's going to be a combination.
Okay.
And I think the formats will change. I think simple news reading, yes, it will have a significant impact in 5 to 10 years, but more investigative journalism and interviews and more serendipitous exchanges, no.
Okay. What about yourself, Harry?
I'm a no, actually. I think there might be an element of AI generated, news reading, but I personally I don't think the level of personality and the kind of, if you look at like the Tucker Carlsons of the world, there's something very unique about that sort of delivery, and I think that's going to be very hard to recreate. Yeah.
And I agree. I think very simple, I read a lot of Substacks and I will listen to them. And it is a computer-generated voice at the moment, but it's okay because, you're just walking for 5 minutes and listening to it. I think that sort of headlines, like the top headlines, that will be what it's used for. But opinion, commentary, perspective, insights, I think you're right. In detailed journalism, you can't really replace it at the moment with GPT. But who knows? Mikhail, what's your take on that?
I think probably it's a mix.
Yeah.
I think high end, low end, sort of what I think Harry was speaking to earlier, is like the premium. I think there will be premium brands, and I think there'll be low end brands.
Yeah,
I think that's very much the world that we're going towards, and that's going to be a very confusing place to live.
The bad journalists, the ones that are just reading from script, they're going to be the ones to go, right? Because you're not going to need them. But the ones that actually have value to add, those are the ones that are going to stick around.
I think just to add as well, I think it may well be technically very possible to create this kind of that maybe the higher end level. I as a technologist, I think that as an engineer, I think there are solvable problems there, but it's more like whether that will be popular or not, because obviously if I think the world is going to go in the direction where anything that is a sort of a fake, a synthetic human, it will have to be notified as such. I think that's going to be an absolute baseline. So the question is whether people would prefer to listen to an AI or would prefer to listen to a human reading their news. And I think that's going to be the case whether it's news or anything else. And my hunch is that people would prefer to listen to other people.
Yeah, the human touch is difficult to replace, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, the extension, there was a movie in the 80s called Looker where they actually took like 3-dimensional pictures of actors and actresses and they created entire movies without them. They didn't have to do any of the acting.
Oh, yeah.
So that is an extension of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming.
Yeah.
It's a question of when and to what degree. And I think it's hard to draw the line. If you enhance a picture, if you do a deepfake, if you put a jacket on the Pope, how do you regulate that? What is the level of interference and editing that requires some sort of notification? How is that done? Who creates those rules? I think it's very much an open question.
The Mid-Journey prompt with the Pope in the jacket is great. It's my wife believed it for a few minutes when I first showed it to her. Crazy to see that we don't know what we have to believe or not, and that ties into the deep fakes. If there's a lot of these, hundreds, thousands of these accounts, all spreading misinformation, trying to get a particular narrative across, it'll be interesting to see how we can trust that source of information moving forward.